Hello HEMA friends and welcome to this new episode of our Longsword guard series. Today we are going to give a look to Porta di Ferro, the iron door. Porta di Ferro is the first guard presented to us by Maestro Fiore di Liberi, and it is a guard which covers the lower right opening. It can cover all the other openings with a couple of simple movements. This is why Maestro Fiore presents these guards to us, saying that it is very good to wait for the opponent to attack whatever is the weapon that the opponent is using. Maestro Fiore also tells us that this posta needs, of course, a good sword, but also a sword that doesn't have to be very long, simply because to move out of this position to do the main defensive movements that we need, as for example going to frontale, the leverage is against us. So the longer the sword is, the harder it is to move out from this kind of position. So generally speaking, we need a sword that on average is slightly shorter than 130 centimeters, for example, for us, which is the average feather that we have around. So a sword which is around 120, 125 is fine. Of course, we can use this posta also with a longer sword, but we have to modify it a little bit. Because of course the leverage is against us, it is better to start closer to the center line and so create a smaller opening and invite our opponent in a slightly lesser theatrical way.
Remember that it doesn't matter your precise positioning, as soon as your weapon moves down and to the right compared to breve, our neutral position with point on line and hands close to the body, you are in Porta di Ferro. Being close to the center line makes for faster parries and reactions, but with lesser inertia, and vice versa for the opposite case. You can of course do Porta di Ferro right foot forward or left foot forward. The left foot forward version is the most defensive version. It is a slightly lesser mobile, but it makes you move your sword around more freely, due to your right shoulder being slightly backward. The right foot forward version is of course the opposite, slightly lesser comfortable in terms of moving the sword around, but has more mobility in terms of footwork and slightly more balanced defensive and offensive capabilities.
Let's now give a look to the main defensive actions of our Porta di Ferro.
The first main defensive action Porta di Ferro can do connects this posta to posta frontale. While moving toward the frontale, you can easily parry right fendenti and also mezzani and thrusts directed to the upper torso and toward the head or neck. You can land a good variety of riposts from there, both cuts and thrusts. I would advise you to check the video above, my Longsword Techniques compendium about the inside parry, to learn more about this specific topic. The second defensive motion is done by reaching posta di donna. This defensive motion gives its best if you are able to move slightly toward the left with your left foot. By the way, it doesn't matter if it is the backward or forward one. Just move it slightly toward the left. In this way, it is possible to defend easily from roversi, both fendenti and mezzani. And the most direct riposte from there is a powerful fendente, toward the head or toward the arms, or both at the same time. It is possible to also deliver other riposts from there, such as the reverso mezzano, for example, and you will find some hints about this play in my video about this specific cut. The third defensive action is done by reaching breve or longa, and it is the scambiare di punta action described by Fiore himself. Notice that this action landed with this form works mainly with thrust which starts from below, from guards such as Porta di Ferro mezzana. The thrusts that you can exchange are generally also aimed toward your torso. If the thrust is thrown toward your head instead, with hands high, it is almost impossible to exchange, and so crossing it in frontale is basically mandatory. The solution which Fiore suggests for this case is to grab the sword of the opponent with your left hand and then land a one-handed cut or thrust. The last action I am going to mention is done by reaching Porta di Ferro and not by moving away from it. This, by the way, you will notice happens quite frequently. In the Glossa, Maestro Fiore mentions the use of the posta as a starting or arriving point, very often, without too much distinction. Actual fighting experience is needed to understand which advice is what, and that's maybe also why this video is worth watching. So, the last action is romper di punta, namely parrying downward, with a cutting motion or similar, while reaching Porta di Ferro, of course. This can be easily seen in these couple of examples. A thrust with cavazione is landed, the first parry, which goes toward the frontale or breve, is eluded by the cavazione, and the subsequent real thrusting motion is then parried by moving down toward Porta di Ferro. This works against cuts also if they have enough sideways component. By the way, notice how the movement from Porta di Ferro to frontale or breve and then back again to Porta di Ferro is useful in this case. By the way, if you are enjoying this video, consider joining my Patreon, where I am sharing my full interpretation of Fiore Liberi Gioco Largo, aka Wide Play, right now. I already made 5 videos with more than 3 hours of content, so if you are interested in learning Italian longsword, this series may be useful for you. Anyway, back to the topic.
As you have seen, there are many options to defend ourselves from Porta di Ferro using a relatively small amount of movement. This is why it is a very good posta talking about defensive actions, to wait for the opponent to attack. Talking about offensive actions instead, we have a relatively small variety of ideal options which we can use to attack from this kind of position. Of course, we are not limited to this kind of options, but generally speaking are the easier and so the ideal one to land an attack from this posta. So let's give them a look.
The main offensive options from Porta di Ferro are a few, but are solid and tend to cover most of the offensive necessities. The first one is the mandritto mezzano. This is the main tool you can use to threaten the opponent's hands or arms, depending from the position of the opponent's hands, of course, and to beat aside the opponent's blade to then land a cut into the opening. It is generally easier to land this action while being right foot forward. The snappy and fast nature of the attack and the position of your shoulder makes the right foot forward guard the best one. It is also possible to land a fendente too, but it is slightly less comfortable and direct. Same is for the mandritto sottano with the false edge. Doable, but definitely uncomfortable. But the main attack from Porta di Ferro is indeed the thrust. You can land 3 of the 5 thrusts, namely the central one with no opposition at neck or chest, the low left one, which opposes that line, and it is basically the thrust of the scambiare di punta you have seen before, and the high left one, useful to attack posta di donna. The central thrust, if you want to stick a piece of steel into someone, is definitely the best one because of its structure and angle, but it is also the riskier one, as it can be easily exchanged. In our modern fencing environment is generally also the most dangerous one, for the same motivation I just mentioned, and also, again, the riskier one because it is easier to exchange, again. The right low thrust, besides its defensive capabilities, it is also useful to attack, fun enough, someone in Porta di Ferro. By preemptively closing the main line of movement, this thrust, if landed from a proper distance and with proper timing, can stop the opponent from doing anything. It is basically a preemptive scambiare if you prefer to think about it this way. The upper right thrust instead is useful to attack posta di donna, by opposing its main pattern of movement, the one of the mandritto fendente. Every attack that we have seen can be landed to cover a line or engage the opponent blade and aim for stretto while doing so, as Fiore suggests in the Glossa.
Very good. So as you have seen, I have landed a number of simple actions. Of course, you can create compound actions while starting from this simple one. The goal of this series is to see the ideal simple actions, the ideal simple movements that start from a guard. You can of course create a compound action with whatever movement you have seen in this video. For example, if you're landing a high thrust, you can land a pommel strike if the opponent parries the thrust, or you can land a fendente, for example, if you have enough distance from the opponent. And this, of course, is just an example. You can create as much compound action as you want, starting from the simple action that we have seen in this video. Also, by watching the next episodes, and so understanding the other poste with their movements, their simple actions, etc., it will be easier for you to understand which poste is connected to another thanks to a specific movement. And so creating compound actions will be easier while understanding all these simple movements and putting them together as Lego bricks, let's say. It will be easy for you to create new compound actions. Very good. If you remained till this point, it seems you are interested enough for the next step, which is reading the glossa together. And of course, I will translate it for you from Italic to English. Very good. So this is the nerdy part of the video, so I need my eyeglasses. Ok, let's go. So qui cominciano le guardie di spada doiman. So here starts the guards of spada doiman, spada due mani, longsword. Two-handed sword. E sono due guardie. So he basically refers here, he says, and there are two guards. He's referring to Porta di Ferro and Posta di Donna, which are one in front of each other. La prima si è tutta Porta di Ferro, che sta in grande fortezza. So the first one is full iron door, which stays in strength. So he's very strong. Now, full iron door is because it's tutta Porta di Ferro, which tutta is full, and of course, Porta di Ferro, iron door. E si è buona ad aspettare ogni arma manuale, longa o curta. So it is very good to wait for whatever kind of weapon, so for the opponent to attack with whatever kind of weapon, be it long or short. E pur che abbia buona spada, non curi di troppa lunghezza. So he basically says that, of course, it needs a good sword, but it doesn't have to be very long, as I told you. Ella passa con coverta e va alle strette. So this guard steps with coverta, with a parry, and goes to stretto. E la scambia le punte e le soi ella mette. So it does the exchange of thrusts, and of course also it lands his own one. Sorry people, I had to change place because it started raining. Ancora, ribatte le punte a terra e sempre va con passo. So it beats down the opponent thrusts, as we have seen in the compound parry action, and of course goes with a step toward the opponent, to hit the opponent, of course. E di ogni colpo ella fa coverta, e chi in quella guardia gli dà briga, grandi difese fa senza fatica. So it covers every blow, it defends very well, as he already stated, but he tells this again simply because it is actually a very good defensive position. And whoever will attack this guard will of course defend without any problem.
Very good people, we have explored Porta di Ferro. The next posta we are going to explore is Posta di Donna. Be ready for a long and complex video. Yeah, longer than this one, most probably. Anyway, as always, thanks for watching. Remember to join my Patreon if you want to support me directly, and to like and subscribe, which is free and helps me a lot to grow up this channel. And, well, see you next time.